Welcome back. Just joining us after No Boundaries takes their second victory of the day. Again, just charging right into the enemy and using their name to great effect, having no boundaries on their, well, lack of lubed anal passage, shall we say. That was
Wow.
pretty bad.
Wow. Okay.
Hey.
So with that, I have now taken the lead as far as predictions are concerned. Rep Cartel just pretty cleanly won that match. I think they executed after
It was No
their.
Boundaries, not Rep Cartel.
Oh yeah, thank you. No boundaries. I think after their initial bumbles where they didn't go after the logistics, once they did, they seemed to have some pretty good target selection there. So good job to them.
Yeah, it was an interesting start. I was really concerned at the beginning. The reason I hesitated to glare, No Boundaries, my favorite, were those flycatchers. 3 flycatchers, and No Boundaries brought 6 frigate hulls, and I'm just like, okay, they're going to be Swiss cheese in 3 seconds. The flycatchers weren't quite as effective as I'd expected them to be. They still did kill those 2 rifters pretty quick, but meanwhile, the No Boundaries team was kind of in chaos. There was damage going down across 4 or 5 different targets. No one was focusing on anything. I'm not sure exactly what was happening while they settled in, but as soon as they did settle in on the logistics, the scimitar just exploded, and the match was pretty much over from there.
I guess you could say.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Saw that.
I guess you could say Deepwater was left in Deepwater.
Oh.
Wow, it's like we have Seldarine all over again.
But the delivery's better.
This is true. This is true.
And it wasn't
again,
just the
thank
scimitar.
you for
Like
that.
they're. Damn it, Brent. I'm trying to be professional.
Says the guy that was just talking about an anal passage.
Hey now.
Let's just jump over to Rise and continue to talk about the rapid launchers.
All right, so catching people up, these rapid launchers are going to do massive DPS up front and then experience a rather long reload time, sort of like an offensive version of the ASB. What led you guys to go to this as the mechanic to sort of solve the balance issues that you saw there?
I mean, like I said, kind of before, we wanted to make them more interesting, wanted to lower their overall power, basically, because they're very powerful, and wanted to keep them useful. The part of the reason I felt like we needed to move to some new mechanic or some new sort of kind of add something to the mix is that they were in a spot where because they're, I don't know, if we talked with the CSM about lowering their power level as they were by just lowering their damage output by a little bit, and we're in a position where if we do that, they just become never the right choice. Basically, they're on a really thin line where they're probably too powerful as they are, but if they get much less powerful at all, they're just not useful. And so rather than moving them up or down, I kind of thought moving them sideways might be just more fun overall, because you will have more interesting decisions to make, but hopefully won't have a right answer that's consistent all the time. And there's probably many ways that could be done, but this seemed fun to everybody, so we kind of went with this one.
When are players going to be able to sink their teeth into this?
I don't actually know when the next CC build is going to be. I think that they're happening pretty rapidly, so hopefully it's like at the start of this week, but I don't actually know that for sure. As everyone can tell, this is pretty late in the process, and so there won't be a ton of time for people to be testing it on CC before it goes out, but we spent some time playing with it, and we have good opportunities to iterate on it after it releases. Basically, we have another release that's not too long after where we can make tweaks if we need to, but there should at least be some time on CC before the expansion actually comes out where we can get some feedback in.
And what areas of feedback are you particularly looking at? Are you looking at the DPS front-loaded? Are you looking at more the reload time? What areas are you as a designer think there's wiggle room for player feedback?
Yeah, I think it's mostly related to the upfront damage output. I think there's some potential that especially with the heavies could actually be too strong, that being able to front load a bunch of really easy to apply DPS from a battleship could actually be really, really powerful. And so that's a little bit of a concern. And then on the other side, there's a concern that, like, with Rapid Lights, even though it's quite a lot of DPS up front, it might not be enough to feel useful, especially on your own. I'm not too worried about it in groups, but you know, if it's very difficult to fight like assault frigates, like if that doesn't feel good, like I could see making tweaks to improve that a little bit. You know, some of the general usability associated with the reload time, definitely watching feedback related to that, but I'm more just more interested in tuning the damage right so that it meets as, you know, good of a like usefulness versus not being overpowered as always, which is like, you know, that takes a lot of time, I think, to get it exactly right. But that's sort of where most of the feedback focus would be, I think.
So currently we see Rapid Lights on Caracol hulls and Cerberuses most often. Which, with the changes coming in, which circumstances and ships do you sort of envision this weapon system being prevalent on? Because a lot of these missile ships don't get an explicit bonus to that. They have bonuses to several weapon types at the same time, and that reload penalty, especially in a fleet fight environment, could be rather stiff for some players, where not being able to shoot for that long of a period of time could be pretty crippling.
So an important piece of like context I think there is to give is that the reload time can't be talked about on its own. If the reload time is actually the problem, like if it's that the system is great but 40 seconds of reload is bad, then you can mitigate it by splitting your weapons up and shooting them at different times. So I don't really see it like not being able to shoot for 40 seconds is just purely insurmountable. If we gave you, you know, a minute of reload time, but we gave you 2,000 DPS up front, I don't think anybody would complain about the reload time, right? Like it's not really, it's more of an issue of what can you do with the damage up front, and is that useful? And generally in EVE, front-loaded damage is much more useful. That's why really low DPS weapons like artillery are actually really good, because they can kill things under logistics or in short time frames, despite the fact that the overall running DPS is very low compared to other systems. So I'm not really concerned about just the reload time on its own being a handicap. It's more about what's possible with that condensed piece of DPS. I think if that, you know, if they can't do enough damage to feel functional, even just in the active time, I could potentially see that being a problem, but I'd be surprised. I think mostly what will have to happen is people will just have to adjust their playstyle to try to take advantage of the extra DPS up front, and then, you know, sort of deal with the reload time however they can. So we're just talking, actually, I was just talking with CSM about things like, you know, warping a bunch of Typhoons on grid with rapid heavies, having a bunch of Typhoons doing 900 DPS with heavy missile application, and then MJDing out and warping away during their reload. Like, there's going to be ways to wield this that are really strong, and that's my hope, that people have to sort of discover good applications for it, rather than just being like, my DPS is kind of low because the combination of how much damage I do and how long I have to reload is bad. So I don't know. I guess I think it's complicated to figure out, and that's kind of the hope, that people have to like do some work to figure out the best way to take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, especially with the battleship micro-warp drive. That's an interesting synergy that you mentioned. As far as the lights, do you foresee the change affecting which ships normally would use this weapon system?
I doubt it. I would think it would be the same ships. I think it would be, you know, fleet scythes, caracols, Serbs, all the stuff that's using them now. I just think that the situations where they're good and the way that you use those ships might change. So, like, it's very easy for me to imagine flying a rapid light. To me, a rapid light Serb sounds better now. Before, the DPS is weak enough that it would have been hard for me to kill anything with a tank bigger than a frigate, whereas now I could definitely see being able to brawl or, you know, kind of dive into a fight briefly, pick something off, and then turn around and run away from the fight during my reload. I think that sounds much more powerful, actually, and the ships that used to use rapid lights are generally very good at that. The Scythe, the Caracol, and the Serb are all very fast and all decent kiters. The rapid lights still have really good range. The thing you don't want to be doing now is sitting and brawling for an extended period of time. That I don't think has to do with the ships so much. I mean, it's not like the system wants you to be in long sustained fights necessarily. So it's just a matter of trying to shift your style to the way they work now.
Well, it's good. It's gonna definitely bring out a lot of tactics for it, and it's good to put it in the hands of the players like that. I think it's cool that you're giving people an opportunity to find out a way to exploit the strengths of the system, while also being able to work around its weaknesses. That's really awesome. But with that, guys, we're going to say goodbye to CCP Rise for the day. Up next, we'll have CCP Affinity and CCP Karker in here, but we are going to take about a 10 to 15 minute break. We'll probably be back around 2015.
Brett, one really quick, if I could jump in there, something that people have been talking about in stream chat that I got poked by Nam to talk about actually real quick. There's a lot of people asking why we're not seeing a lot of ECM, and I think the simple answer is Marauder's Bastion mode. They're immune to ECM, so that may be why we're not seeing that in the meta, and I just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, okay, so one other reason why we wouldn't see ECM is because sentry drones, being as prevalent as they are pretty well immune to ECM in a way. They don't have to have their targets locked to apply damage, so that's another thing that kind of made it a divergent path away from ECM because of that.
Oh, okay. And on that, I think we go to our break, but I just wanted to throw that out there for people to think about a little bit during the break as to why the meta is changing, give them some ideas to what they might see later on in the day.